Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we're going to take a look at the Tops Idaho Hunter. Now most of this footage is going to be from outside, sitting by the fire. My son is going to weigh in as well with some of his thoughts on the Mora Eteris in his own limited way. But I wanted to get this on the tabletop and give you technical specs and stuff. So we'll do that right after we roll in the outdoor footage. Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. I've got my son Joel here with me. Say hi, buddy.
Hi.
And I want to talk a little bit about this knife. This is the Tops Idaho Hunter. This is the Snake River edition, which I do like better, although I don't love the bannering on the blade. But I thought I'll talk about this out here. I'm not going to give you all the technical specs and stuff like that. I'll give you that back in the tabletop review. But I thought we'd have some fun while we're out here in the bush. Our fire is just out of frame. I initially had the fire in frame, but there was so much smoke that I couldn't talk, so we had to move the camera back a little bit. Anyway, Joel also has a knife to show you. Go ahead and show him, buddy. So this knife, do you remember what it's called? Yeah. It's the Mora Eteris. And this is Joel's knife. He usually takes it with him when we go on a little camping trip like this, or a little hike like this. He's helped me out do carving and, you know, get firewood ready and stuff like that. Also, I will say, this is a pretty miserable day. It's been snowing and wet all day, and we wanted to get a fire going. And we were a little worried about whether or not we'd be able to. So we brought one little cheat, and that is a candle. If you've never tried this before, I've often used a candle on days when it's really miserable, because you can light the candle and now you've got flame for good, or at least for a while. So you don't have to worry about getting something to catch. You got a sustained flame there for a while. Anyway, back to the knife in question. I'm going to just talk about the features of this knife while we're out here, and then I'll cover the rest of the material I want to cover about it back with a tabletop review. So first off, let me talk about the blade. It does have a blade finish, and I've done a bunch of cutting with this, and you can see the finish is really good. In fact, 2 minutes ago, I was pounding this through some medium-sized wood to get our fire going, and you can see that the coating on the blade, it's kind of a decorative coating, but it's held up really well, so I'm happy with that. If I turn the blade this way, you can see that it's really thick blade stock. Hold on, gotta get my hand in here to get it focused. Come on, camera. There we go. You can see that it's really thick blade stock, but the tip is pretty fine, and it's actually pretty thin behind the edge. So I definitely like both of those things, and it allows me to do a lot with this knife. One, as I just said, I was just pounding this through some wood to cut it down, but it's thin enough behind the edge that I can slice pretty well also. So it's called a hunting knife, and the idea is, you know, they're suggesting that you'd be able to skin out an animal with this knife, and I think it would actually do just fine. I haven't skinned out any animals with it, but I have cut up a bunch of meat and vegetables and stuff around the house, and it actually slices very, very well. So I'm quite happy with that aspect. And you guys know I'm constantly ranting about balance. Let me switch over and let my son Joel talk about his blade a little bit on the Eteris. All right, show him, buddy. Okay, so there's the blade on the Mora Eteris. You can see that at the bottom here, it's a zero. Well, they're both, I don't know. Okay, go ahead.
And right here it's sort of like Kevin's. It's kind of thick here, but right here it's like skinny, and it's very small.
Good job, buddy. Okay. Let me move on and talk a little bit about ergonomics, and then Joel will have a chance to talk about the handle on his knife as well. So we have here a linen micarta handle that initially looks really weird. Okay, I'll grant you that right away. When you see this knife in pictures, you can kind of go, what is up with that handle? And really the whole knife. It's not the prettiest knife I've ever seen, but let me tell you, it was on sale. So it was one of those knives where it was such a good price that I thought I'd try it in a second. Turns out, once I got it in hand, I really absolutely loved it. So it was, you know, it was a knife that I thought at the very least, I'll check this out as a cool outdoors knife, be able to do a review on it. Don't know how long it'll stay in the collection. Well, once I got it in hand and once I used it just a little bit, I fell in love with it right away. So the ergonomics on this knife, despite the fact that the handle looks kind of odd, is actually one of my favorite things. It's got a nice big choil up here, which I love, so I can I can choke up and do some fine detailed work. And then in the, normal grip back here, really nice jimping here for a saber grip. And then a fully exposed tang with a lanyard hole. So if you wanted to bash anything, you could do that because you've got metal exposed here at the bottom. Also, I will say the way they've layered and contoured the micarta is pretty darn attractive. So that's the handle on the Tops Idaho Hunter. This is, again, the Snake River edition. The regular Idaho Hunter has this weird black bolster here that I really find makes it ugly. So this edition is much more appealing to me. Okay, Joel, go ahead and talk about your handle a little.
I like that it has the diamond texture, and it has a good grip right here for your hands.
And tell them how old you are, buddy.
7.
So how does that handle fit in your hand? Is it pretty well a perfect size?
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
And you can also bash things with that, because that's hard plastic, and there's like also rubber, so there's like a good handle grip.
Good job, buddy. Okay, last thing I want to talk about while we're out here, and as I say, I'll cover size and weight and all that kind of stuff from the tabletop, but I've got to talk about this sheath. Yep, you can. You'll talk about yours too. This sheath is amazing, guys. The retention is fantastic. Pops in really well. Now, Tops normally does these taco sheaths, these fold-over style sheaths, and often the big failure there is that you don't have anything to push against, but in this case, they've actually thought of that and gone ahead and given you something that you can push your thumb on here to extract the knife, which is really, really nice. Now, the big thing that I love about this sheath is right here. This is the clip. I love this clip because you don't have to, you can kind of do whatever you want with it. You can see that it does close fully so that if you put this on a belt, it's going to stay on that belt really, really well. But you don't have to. You can just open this up and clip it on, the pocket of your pants, on molly webbing, on straps on your backpack. You can clip it to all kinds of different things. And without taking your belt off, you can easily get it off, which to me is a huge thing, especially with a knife of this size. I want that ability to put it on and off, whatever it is I'm wearing it on, a belt or the top of my pocket or the top of my pants.
Mostly a belt.
Yeah, mostly a belt. So that I can take it on and off, so that when I sit down or go to drive the car or something like that, I can just pop it off, set it down, and I don't have to worry about it. What about the sheath on yours, pal?
There is 2
Yeah, that's just the symbol.
things for Simba.
What's it made out of?
Plastic.
Yeah, hard plastic.
And there's 2 holes right here.
Yeah, those are drainage holes, so water can come out easily.
And it feels really nice, and there's like
Does it keep the knife in really good?
yeah, it's actually kind of hard to get it out.
Here, maybe you should show them.
It is actually kind of easy to see. I actually had to use a lot of might for that. So, and this is it in the scabbard. So
there you go. All right, guys, so I'm going to let you go, but one last, oh, wait a minute. While we're out here, forget it. I'll do the comparisons at the table talk, but I've got a couple other knives out here with me, but I'll save that for a different day. It's getting kind of smoky. The wind direction's changed. So we're going to let you go. I'll talk about the rest of this when I get back to the tabletop. Thanks for helping, Joel. Okay, so now you've had a chance to look closely at the knife, and I've talked about all the different features and why I like this knife as much as I do. Let me give you a size, weight, and all that stuff that we care about. So 10 inches overall, 4 11/16 on the blade length here, 5 5/8 on the handle, and that's the whole handle, including the exposed tang down here. In terms of grip area, you've got about 4 1/4 inches, which is actually quite a bit of real estate. You can see that back here at the end, I've still got some space. So even if you had much larger hands than I do, and I wear a size large glove, you would still have room on this handle, as well as that choked up position with that finger choil here at the front. I really, really like this, especially given the intended use of this knife as a hunting knife. If you're going to use this for skinning, you may want to be able to get up there and do some more detailed work. All right, now, the other thing we need to cover here is the weight on this. All by itself, this knife weighs in at 8 ounces. When you add the sheath, that's going to add 3 ounces. So it's 11 ounces that you're actually carrying around with you. And the total length that you're carrying with you is going to be about 10 and 5/8, almost 10 and 3/4. So that's, in case you wanted to, I don't know, carry it just in a pack or something, you might want that overall length. I will say this, it carries really, really nicely, and that's because the sheath is so well done. I really, really like it. The steel, of course, is 1095. And that's going to, Tops is pretty well known for how good of a job they do on their 1095 steel. Let's go ahead and grab some comparisons to this knife, beginning with a knife that I put in a similar vein, although is quite a bit bigger. This, of course, is the SE6. The nice thing is I find both of these pretty balanced. They're both heavy-duty knives, but both of them will actually cut fairly well. And that's something I really look for in my outdoor knives. I know there are lots of knives out there that are just designed to be, tough and indestructible, but oftentimes they end up with such a thick edge geometry that they, unless you're chopping, they won't cut anything. And at that point, you'd be better off to have an axe because they don't do the cutting tasks very well. They're only choppers, and they're not as good of choppers as an axe or a hatchet would be. So I feel like if you're going to make a knife, make sure that it slices, and both of these really do that well. Obviously, the SE is quite a bit bigger, or I don't know, maybe not quite a bit, but substantially. If you look at them blade to blade, you can see there's a lot more cutting edge on the SE. However, that can be good or bad. The fact that the Tops is smaller, and I actually like the ergonomics a little better on the Tops, does mean it's a little more versatile. You can get a little more done with it in terms of fine detailed work. The SE is not quite as good at that. Still a great knife though. Let's grab a couple of other comparisons. Let's switch to a bit of a budget offering. Now, this is the SCHF 52, but there is an SCHF 51 that's shorter and be more comparable to this. And this is going to come in at considerably less, probably about half the price or even less than half price. I think these are like $50 in the US, maybe 40. They're probably 60 to 70 in Canada. Pretty decent survival knife. The biggest difference with a knife of this size is this you're going to be able to do some chopping with. There's enough weight here, and that hook on the handle means you can get way back here and do some chopping. The one limitation that this has is it's not going to chop at all. There's just not enough substance here for you to do any meaningful chopping this way. The reality though is that I don't find myself doing that with a knife very often, okay? So to me, that's not really a huge issue. I'm more concerned with toughness. Can I do some light batoning with it? And will it cut well? The other option I've got to show you here is again going to be a little bigger. This is probably the closest in size that we've looked at, and this is going to be, of course, the Bark River. This is the Bravo 1 Vortex. So it's based on the Bravo 1, but it's a variant with a more pointed blade and a little bit of a longer blade. Both of these are very, very good out in the bush. This one is going to cut just a teeny bit better. I mean, carve. Let's say if I'm doing, let's say feather sticks or something, it does carve really, really well because of that zero grind. All right. But that's really about the only advantage that this knife has over this one. All right. Otherwise, they're very similar. Now, there's quite a significant difference in price, which is worth considering when you're looking at, which one of these you're going to want to go with. But I do love both of these knives and look for a full review coming up on this one in the not too distant future. So hopefully, guys, that gives you an idea of what you're dealing with in terms of size and weight, and gives you some comparables that maybe you're familiar with that can help give you some context. Let me wrap this up by saying I find this to be an extremely versatile knife. And for that reason, I really, really love it. It's long enough that I can get pretty much anything that I need to do with a knife done. It's got a very thick, heavy stock, so I can even do some batoning with this without being too worried about it, and I have. The one limitation it does have compared to some of the other knives I've shown you is there's not really enough weight here to swing and get any kind of chopping power. The way I use a knife like this is to put it, let's say I do need to chop, well, I would set this on the log and use something to pound it into that and of course sort of take my V out. And yeah, that's probably a little bit slower. It is, however, very controlled. So you can get by with a knife like this if you need to. My preference would be to pair this with either a silky saw or a hatchet or a small axe or something like that. And that's normally what I take. When I'm going into the bush, I'll take a small cold steel axe and a silky saw and then a knife on my belt. And this, in that role, works really, really well. And as I said, the nice thing about it is if you left one of those things behind, this knife is tough enough that it can do double duty as, you know, some light batoning and some sort of chopping or some processing of large wood if you really, really need to. So there you go, guys. Absolutely in love with this knife. Great ergonomics, great blade shape. I really like the finish here, and you can see it's held up for me pretty well. Now, over time, this is going to get worse and worse. I have no doubt in my mind about that. But even at this point, with a fair bit of use on it, it's looking pretty good. All right, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.